Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with the miserable liberal. And
I'm miserable.
Hi. And Ron Placone is here. You can't see him, but you can hear him.
Hello.
So this young lady, Ahed Tamimi, has been in the news a lot. She's a Palestinian. And here's a picture of her brother was recently killed by a tear gas canister. I don't know if you can see. There's a rifle coming out of an armored vehicle. A rifle, there it is, the muzzle, and then there is the canister. You're not supposed to shoot it at someone's head. That's for, by the way, a long-range rifle, to shoot canisters long range. This guy's like 5 feet from the thing. They shoot it right at his head, kill him.
Wow.
Because he was a threat to them because he's throwing rocks at people in an armored vehicle. So he was a threat. So in order to keep the peace, they had to kill a guy. They had to kill a guy. Bunch of occupiers. And so this young lady is famous for standing up to them. Here's a little bit. Here's a little. That's her. That's her as a 12-year-old girl. So that's her. That's what she does. Because she lives in an occupied open-air prison. She lives in an occupied territory. It's been occupied her whole life. She's been living like that her whole life. And, well, here's a little bit more about her. Well, let's do this. Here's how The Guardian talked about it. Ahed is a member of the second generation of Palestinians who grew up under occupation. Her father, Bassem, was born in 1967, the year Israel seized the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the Golan Heights in the Six-Day War. Children have known only a life of checkpoints, identity papers, detentions, house demolitions, intimidation, humiliation, and violence. This is their normal. Kids grown up, it's all they've known is military occupation by an oppressive force. The family, their home is in Area C, the 62% of the West Bank that is under Israeli military control. Their village, Nabi Salah, has been the scene of frequent protests since Israeli settlers appropriated the local spring a decade ago. Basim and his wife, Neriman, and other members of the family have often been at the forefront. Stones have been thrown by protesters. Israel forces have responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, water cannons, and sometimes live ammunition. At least 2 villagers, including Ahed's uncle Rushdie, have been killed, hundreds injured, and at least 140 people detained or imprisoned. Among them, Basim and Neriman several times, meaning that her parents. Ahed has grown up in the environment. When I asked her how often she had experienced tear gas, she laughed, saying she couldn't count the times. She described military raids on her family home. Military raid on our... Can you imagine you're a kid and the military raids your house? Imagine that. You're a kid. She described military raids on a family home. I observed Ahed and her brothers as, over and over again, they watched footage of their parents being arrested and their uncle writhing on the ground after being shot. 4 years ago, alongside the fledgling activist who insisted to me she was not frightened. 4 years ago, alongside the fledgling activist who insisted to me she was not frightened of the armed soldiers she passed every day, there was a little girl anxious about being photographed near a military watchtower, and who, according to her parents, sometimes shouted out in her sleep and woke up sobbing. Ahed's experiences are echoed in the lives of hundreds of thousands of children in the West Bank and Gaza. Such a brutal context for childhood, can shape attitudes for a lifetime. Frank Rowney, a former child protection specialist for UNICEF in the Palestinian territory, said that he had observed the intergenerational trauma of those growing up under occupation. The ongoing conflict, the deterioration of the economy and social environment, the increase in violence, this all impacts heavily on children. Children form a ghetto mentality and lose hope for their future, which fuels a cycle of despair. At 12, Ahed told me she wanted to become a lawyer when she grew up so she could fight for Palestinian rights, and at 16, she could be facing a long prison sentence because she's just been arrested. Her story is not just about one child, but a generation, 2 generations without hope and security. Tragically and unforgivably, the same bleak prospects could await a third generation. So if she has kids, her kids are going to grow up under occupation with soldiers and settlers taking their water, taking their streams, taking their land, occupying them, checkpoints, second-class citizens. So here's a little video, actually, she did. I want to show that to you. So let's watch it.
أنا اسمي عهد التميمي من قرية النبي صالح. عندي 16 سنة. كلها يا دوب يعني بس شارع واحد كله. موضوعي المفضل في المدرسة الرياضة. مرح! لو ما كانش في احتلال كنت راح أكون لاعبة كرة قدم. إنه إحنا نقدر نشوف البحر من هون. إنه نص ساعة بس للبحر وممنوع نفوت لأنه وأنا مرفوضة أمني.
So they can see the ocean. The kids can see the ocean. It's only 30 minutes away. They're not allowed to go to the ocean unless they get Israel's permission.
يعني حتى لو طلعت تصريح
من وجود هذا المحتل الذي يؤثر على حياتهم اليومية.
طبعا كل المنطقة هاي في حواليها مستوطنات وكل مكان بتلاقي مستوطنة أو معسكر أو إشي بخص الاحتلال. ولورا هون الحاجز مدخل القرية. أكثر من مرة ما قدرتش أروح على مدرستي لأنه الحاجز اتسكر. أنا هسا يعني مش راح أقدر أفكر لبعيد كثير لأنه في الاحتلال بمنعني من إنه أحلم بأشياء كثير أعملها.
تربية الأطفال تحت الاحتلال يعني يعقد المسؤولية الآباء ويعني تصبح مسؤولية أكثر يعني إشكالية وأكثر تعقيد.
إنه أنا كبنت كنت أنزل ألعب بالشارع كانوا الجيش يفوت على البلد ويصير يطخوا.
So I don't know if you could read that, but she said when she was little and she would go into the street to play, soldiers would start shooting.
كل النساء الفلسطينيات عم نربي أولادنا إنه يكونوا قويين للمطالبة بحقهم والوقوف ضد هذا الاحتلال الموجود على أرضنا.
لكن إحنا في قرية النبي صالح قلنا ومن البداية أن مشاركة الأطفال في المواجهة اليومية والمقاومة الشعبية هو لتدريبهم على القدرة، وهذا عزز من ثقة أطفالنا بأنفسهم وجعلهم أكثر قدرة على مواجهة أي مشكلة بتواجههم.
بيوم من الأيام لما شفنا المستوطنين نزلوا على عين الماء قررنا نصير نعمل مواجهات.
إنه يلا ننزل، لما شفنا الشباب يلا ننزل ونزلنا وهيك بلش هي
كانت طفلة لكن كانت تخرج في كل مرة يتم اعتقال أحد الشباب مع النساء اللي تحت في الشارع. كل أولاد النبي صالح وكل الأسر مرت بنفس الأسر اللي مرت في دار باسم، كلهم مروا باعتقالات زي ما اعتقلوا ابن محمد. فقلت لهم أنا بمسك الكاميرا، كانوا اللي تعلموا الإسعاف يعني.
طلعنا مثلها بيوم واحد جمعة واحدة طلعنا 1000 وحدة بس في يوم واحد.
شوي شوي تطورت، صرت أسعف وأصور وأمسك الكاميرا بالعكس دائما. سببت لي هاي الكاميرا مشاكل كثير.
My wife was arrested 5 times because of participating in this type of demonstration.
هم كانوا بدهم شيء يعني أصور لأنه هم بدهم يخفوا هاي الحقيقة.
لأنه إحنا مش بس بنقاوم من طريق إنه ننزل مواجهات وهيك، لا، بنقاوم عن طريق الإعلام، لأنه الفترة هاي صار الظلم على كل العالم. بس بدي أطلع على أمريكا عشان أوصل لكل العالم إحنا مش خايفين لا من ترامب ولا من غيره. كنت حابة أزور نيويورك، يعني هيك بشوف صور كتير وناس من نيويورك يعني بيعملوا لها إشي كبير، بدي أشوف هالإشي الكبير، وخاصة إني أنا بس أسافر بتعدى بتعذيب غير عن الكل، بحجة إنه أنا خطيرة على أمن الدولة كل شيء. بالنهاية الإشي إنساني، الكل يعني كلنا ضحية احتلال. نترك كفلسطينيين مش راح نترك أي حدا مظلوم يتعدى على حاله. بس لا، بحكي لهم إنه يستمروا بمقاومتهم، يأثر عليهم، لأنه الحق لازم يطلع صوته.
Okay, so I wanted to play that whole thing so you got a good taste of who she is and what it's like to grow up under occupation. And now I want to show you how Newsweek covered her. So here's how Newsweek covered her. Despite her age, Ahed Tamimi has a long history of assault against police and soldiers. That reminds me when that racist cop in Ferguson, Missouri, executed Mike Brown, shot him from 30 feet away 10, 15 times. From 30 feet away, shot him. And then the headline was, Mike Brown was no angel. Remember that? That's what this is. There's your Mick resistance. There's your resistance, huh? That's unbelievable. That's Newsweek. So now you know why people get their news from YouTube and not fucking Newsweek. Ugh. That's so. By the way, I follow this Jamenta, and I love what Jamenta had to say about it. It said, editor, I need a story, a headline that makes a criminal out of a child living under a violent military occupation. Writer, I got you.
That is a good tweet.
Israeli soldiers killed Ahed's cousin. I'm sorry, that was her cousin, not her brother. I said at the top of this news report that it was her brother. It was her cousin. Israeli soldiers killed Ahed's cousin Musab today, shot her cousin Mohammed in the head 2 weeks ago, killed her cousin Rushdie in 2012, and killed her cousin Mustafa in 2011. But Newsweek says the Israeli occupation is the victim. Wow. So, and we just featured Jake Tapper telling you that anybody who highlights the problems of an illegal occupation by the Israeli government is anti-Semitic and should be dismissed. That's what Jake Tapper at CNN did. Jake Tapper at CNN, after the whole world condemned Trump and Israel, after the whole world did, the UN did, Jake Tapper decided to do a whole segment to show you that the people condemning Israel and Trump for moving the capital of Jerusalem and ending any chance for peace, Jake Tapper did a segment to let you know that they're right, that Trump is right and Netanyahu is right and the soldiers are right and the occupation is right. Because anybody who said anything about it, Jake Tapper smeared them. Go look at the video I did. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. And it's not just horrible Jake Tapper, pretend journalist, propagandist of the highest order who gets paid $30,000, $40,000 a day to misinform you. They're all doing it. You think they're going to tell you the truth about Israel's occupation at the MSNBC or the Washington Post or the New York Times? They are not. Remember all the stories they run in the Washington Post, New York Times about what it's like growing up like a kid in Palestine and under an occupation? Remember all those stories they ran? I don't remember any.
I don't
Yeah,
either.
well, if they did, we'd probably live in a different country, or at least you would hope so. If they did an honest profile like the one we just watched, because this actually reminded me. I remember, and I don't mean to like mix issues, but I remember when Iraq was first vamping up. I think.
I mean, when they were ramping up the war against Iraq?
Yes. I remember, I think it was actually MTV, of all places, which I doubt something like this would happen today. But back then, they did a thing where they followed an Iraqi teenager throughout the whole thing. Like, they would interview him, and before we started bombing, basically, he was just a normal kid. He showed everybody his room. He was into some of the same music I liked and all this other stuff. And then they would like follow up with him as violence escalated, and he'd be like crying, he'd be scared, and I remember just being like, "This is just a guy like me. Like he should be going to school and trying to date and doing whatever, and he's hiding and fearful for his life. This is so. Why would we ever do something like war? This is disgusting." And man, if honest assessments like the video we just watched were more prevalent in our corporate media, you'd like to think we would have different policies in this country, and instead of nonsensical headlines like what Newsweek just did.
It's this Newsweek, Jake Tapper. It's why we have a show. And it makes me so angry at the establishment news media. And the fact that anybody would ever want their approval is just mind-blowing to me. That anybody would fight to get on those shows is mind-blowing to me. I want to be part of the corporate propaganda. I want to help somehow, whatever little way I can. I want to help increase ratings at a bullshit corporate news station. Why would you want to do that? Oh, I know, for money. That's right. I forgot. That's right. There's money in it. That's why, right? That's what it is. So, Steph, you taught school for many years. You were a great teacher. And what do you think the effect of a kid growing up like that in an occupation is? Seeing her cousins shot in the head, her other cousin killed, and she goes up to these soldiers who are occupying her town. What is she supposed to do? I mean, I wonder what the psychology of that has got to be amazing, I got pulled over one time by some cops who were fucking assholes in LA when I first moved here. So I was a young guy and I wasn't doing nothing, and they thought I was buying crack, and they pulled me over with their guns out. Me, with their guns out. Now, immediately in my head, one of those guys' fingers slipped, they're going to find a gun in my car. That's what I know. They shoot me, they're going to find a gun in my car. And they were dicks to me. They turned everything out of my car upside down, inside out, looking for drugs because they wanted to put me in prison because I'm a threat to the society, and these guys don't have a thinking brain cell in their fucking heads. They are robots who are there to oppress you. And they did. They oppressed me that night. They humiliated me in public. They made me feel like shit. And for weeks, I couldn't sleep right. For weeks, I had this fucking burning anger inside of me. And I couldn't get over the fact that I'm a privileged white guy. I didn't go to prison. They didn't arrest me that night. They let me go. I'm white. And I was driving my roommate's BMW. I was white, and they let me, and they still effed with me, but they let me go. Now, just imagine every day of your life. You got to go through a checkpoint, soldiers, a kid, a baby kid, from her earliest memories, soldiers. And now she's arrested. They arrested her. So now she's arrested because she stands up to soldiers. They killed her cousins. Go ahead.
I just want to, watching this story, it's depressing. It's overwhelming, and it's tragedy in motion. And I think, when you pointed out, that I would be, when I was a high school teacher, I would be faced with different challenges, because when you have an issue like this, like what you're supposed to be doing in the classroom is you connect literature with real events.
Right.
That's why it's supposed to be deeper and have greater resonance and meaning. And that it's just not a book with characters, but it has a deeper meaning to it. And in Romeo and Juliet, you have two households, both alike in dignity. In Fair Verona will relay our scene. So you have two homes, two households. And they have been in a constant war. They don't even remember what the war is about any longer, or the feud, rather. And so when you see this young person trying to thrive in a world of war, and how do you not feel despair? And when I saw her kicking and slapping the soldiers, it's like, the soldiers now, to me, and police are now a huge symbol of
Oppression.
and brutalization.
And brutalization, yes, all that. Inequality, oppression, brutalization, military might, occupation, every horrible thing you can think of.
They're despots. And, there's nothing, you can't do anything. What she has
Nothing.
recourse.
No recourse, none. The whole world just voted against them. The whole world just said this was horrible. And CNN and Jake Tapper will tell you the whole world is effed up, and Trump and Netanyahu are right. That's CNN and Jake Tapper will tell you that. What world? That's the same CNN that's going to tell you we should bomb Iraq, and we should bomb Syria, and we should bomb Afghanistan, and we should bomb Libya, and we should bomb Yemen, and we should bomb Niger. That's the same CNN that'll tell you that. They'll also tell you that Trump and Netanyahu are right. That's what they did.
Is this the same CNN who hired Lewandowski?
Hired Lewandowski.
Huh.
But then they pretend they're the resistance. Jake Tapper is so upset at Donald Trump's tweets. So this is her cousin Mustafa, shot in the head at point blank range against regulations and every military. You're not supposed to do that. And of course, there's nothing going to happen to those soldiers, and that guy's dead. So it's horribly tragic, but that's the world we live in now, and we don't have a media that's going to tell you the truth about it. So we'll tell you the truth about it as best we can assess it here. And that's all. Anything else? Anybody? It's just depressing. It's sad. That's who that girl is. So you're going to hear a lot of stuff in the news. That's who she is. And that's what's happening. And now in America, they're trying to make it illegal for you to protest that. Our bought government now is trying to make it illegal for us to protest that.